do you think that we're going to go back to Berlin? Or is it like a one and done type trip?
Well, seeing how we got like 2 months left, a month and a half left, probably done.
So
one and done.
would you recommend somebody to go, like how much time would you recommend somebody to go spend when they go?
Like
do you
3
think
days.
3 days and that's it? Like you can do everything you need to do
You can
in
go
3
on
days?
a weekend, yeah. To be honest, honestly, aside, it's not. I feel like there's not that much stuff like to see. Like there's
Really?
like like it's more like just if you want to go to the club. I mean, like it's a part of like their culture. Like they market it. Their clubs are only were open during coronavirus because they were identified as a culture center. Like it's a part of their life in Berlin. Like it's necessary. Like it was like museums, art museums, museums, and certain clubs have been around like since the 80s that were identified as like cultural like birthplaces for, I don't know, for
Their culture?
their culture, for Germany. It's like house music.
I remember you told me that, I think, before we left or when we first got there. And now, after actually visiting there, I see it very differently. Like, I think I can understand more why they would fall under a cultural market as, like, a part of their culture, like a necessity and like, something that they can't close. But from...
So aside from that the memorials, right? The couple memorials that they have, and they have like some botanical gardens and stuff like that. It's a larger city, but I mean, I feel like you could hit everything in like 3 days. Like you can like sightsee all day and then go to the clubs and then wake up. You could probably see everything like in a day if you really wanted to.
So I was talking to somebody who told me last week that they would need a week to be in Berlin in order to soak up all the history.
I don't know.
You think that's overdoing it?
I'm like, you could only look at a wall for so much. I'm serious. Like, I mean, it was cool. Like, I've loved graffiti ever since I was a little boy, right? And I would open up, like magazines, graffiti magazines, like back in the day, and it'd have things like Berlin. You know, Berlin was always known for like their graffiti scene and stuff like that. So me going there, I was like, oh my God, this is like one of those. It was almost kind of like going to New York for the first time. And then being in New York, the whole reason I wanted to be in New York is because, or go to New York is because the graffiti movement in the 80s and like what they kind of is still surviving there. Berlin is the same way, but it's kind of like, it's still very prevalent. I mean, you've seen it when we went to Berlin. There's whole sections of the city pretty much like dedicated towards like street art, right? So that for me was awesome. The Berlin Wall has street art itself, right? And graffiti on it. But aside from the history that you should probably know beforehand, before going, and I think we went to like a couple museums about the Berlin Wall and stuff like that. I don't know. Brandenburg Gate. I mean, that was awesome being there, like where...
It was pretty iconic.
Yeah, it was an iconic place where they started like knocking down the wall and stuff like that, and also with Checkpoint Charlie, which is the kind of demilitarized zone in between Germany and the USSR at the time. Yeah, I mean that was dope. That was cool. The memorials, that was cool. But like, there's I feel like in two days you can hit all the bigger stuff. And a lot of the city's kind of new, just because they rebuilt it from World War II. I mean, they leveled that place, and then USSR started rebuilding the east side, which was like they controlled most of that. And then I guess at the Berlin airlift during the start, or when they had the wall up, like that's iconic, being there and being like, oh, the Berlin airlift was formed here. This is how, like, for my military people, like, this is how we practiced airlifts in the Air Force. Like the whole concept came from this point in time, this point in history. But aside from that, yeah, I feel like, and eating and hanging out, like, yeah, it's kind of like just a chill spot to kick it. It's super dope spot to kick it.
Well, there you go, guys. Welcome back. Another week with Abe and I. And he says you can just take on Berlin in a few days, and that's all you need. But that's what we're getting into this week. Abe and I finally got out of lockdown, and we're able to stretch our legs outside of K-Town, which is where we live, and that's what we call where we live, Kaiserslautern, Germany. And we went to Berlin, and we only went for a few days.
It's like a 6-hour drive.
It was a 6-hour drive.
But we did it with a 2-year-old and a small pug, which, I mean,
don't come for
there.
Chloe.
I don't know. She's just there.
Anyways.
Oh, she just sheds. That's it.
So why we do these, when we do these travel episodes with you guys, we aren't really looking to we want to give you guys the behind the scenes of stuff. Like when you see a nice family photograph on vacation, a vacation family photograph, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I don't know why I'm saying photograph. Anyways, you're like, oh, look at that. Look at that cute family. Everybody's so happy, and it's picture perfect. But what you're not getting in that perfect photo is how many fights there were on the way to the place and back from the place, how many times they got lost, how many accidents happened with one of the kids, who was hangry, where were all the terrible spots, where were all the good spots. So that's kind of what we want to bring with our travel episodes now that we can travel again. So we hope that you guys enjoy, and let's continue to roll with it. But I think,
how'd you find our Airbnb? That was a pretty unique place.
So when Abe and I travel, we have different styles. And I'm going to go with my style first. So because it was my turn to pick out everything, right? So I hop on Airbnb like one does, and that's it. That's the only app I go with. I don't do anything else. And I went on Airbnb. I looked up the center of Berlin, and I was honestly, I was ready to spend some money. And I was going through the hotels. So what we always do, because we have a dog, even though Abe doesn't like to claim her, I always look on Airbnb, filter it. One thing that you should make note of if you are traveling in Europe, make sure that you're looking for AC, right, Abe? Abe taught me that.
Yeah.
And then also make sure that if you have a pet, that you're looking for pet-friendly places. So even though we were on Airbnb, somehow I managed to come across a freaking hotel, which that's never happened. And
it's like a hotel. I don't know. It's odd. It's like a hotel, but not a hotel, right?
Yeah. You know what it was? It was like a hotel and an apartment.
Yeah.
So that was...
And the whole apartment was
a hotel.
Kind of like a hotel.
Yeah. So it was just on Airbnb. I found it it was downtown in Berlin, and it was super dope. If you don't follow us on IG, then you definitely miss the photos. So this was something that was done by a famous artist down there, and the whole theme of the room was Alice in Wonderland, and it was in a graffiti type paint. I don't know if that's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not like when you said photograph.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Anyways, keep it rolling. Yeah. So it was super dope. Art all over the walls. Levi loved it. Abe appreciated it. It was fun staying in there. The only thing that I think that we didn't think about, Abe said when we got to the hotel, was, good job, you didn't think about parking. And we were in the city, so there's not a parking lot traditionally.
No. It's not when I got there. It's when we were on the road. I was like, hey, does this place have parking? You were like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, we have 6 hours to get there. Find me a parking garage or somewhere to park. And you're like, yeah, got it. I won't let you down. We pull up to the hotel, and I'm like, Courtney, where's the parking? And you're like,
But did I let you down? No.
No, you didn't.
Because you guys, you know what I did? So also, this was on my IG story, and my friends are laughing at me that are from like New York, because they know that I'm from Texas. I didn't grow up doing the parallel parking, okay? I didn't even have to take a physical driving test to get my license, all right? That's how we roll down there.
I just want to tell you, the car that we rented parallel parks itself. Like you hit a button and it does it for you.
You saw my IG story and you didn't tell nobody?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So I told Abe, I was like, you know what? You take Levi upstairs. Okay, traveling, like also when we travel, like it's not like as fun as it used to be. Like Abe and I are very like experienced travelers. Like we have traveled on our own and we have traveled together, and now we travel as a family, and it is a whole other ball game because we got a kid and a dog. So there's not a lot of room for mistakes or anything else. Like there's not also a lot of room for fun, to be honest with you. It's all like family oriented fun, if you know what I mean. So I was like, it's 2:00 in the morning, I think, that we got there. And I was like, Abe, you go up. I checked us in. It was a simple check-in. We didn't even have to go to a lobby. So if you guys are interested in staying at the Rosenthal, like you didn't have to deal with the front lobby. That was great.
So that's what our hotel was called. Courtney, I don't know. She probably just came out of left field with that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what it was called.
So we stayed at the Rosenthal Apartments residence. And if you guys follow us on Instagram at the Collective Journey Podcast, we'll be dropping that information on there. But that's where we stayed. I would say it was, other than the fact that there was no parking garage. Okay, so bougie ass Abe was like, I need a parking garage to make our life easier because we are a family and we're trying to get everybody upstairs at 2:00 in the morning in a foreign city in another country. And I'm like, whatever, like we'll wing it. So then I took the car that apparently parallel parks itself. Now he tells me 2 weeks after we're back from Berlin, and I'm like crying in the car, and Abe's like texting me like, is everything good? And I'm like, yo, it's great. Like, I'll catch you in a minute. I'm like sitting there trying to figure out how to parallel park a station wagon on the street. But I will say that if you guys decide to go with that hotel, there was parking right next to the hotel. It was empty every time. We didn't get a ticket. We probably went over our parking meter a few times, almost every time, and there was no ticket. I stopped paying it. Yeah, so there you go. I
stopped paying it because nobody was checking it.
But we're also law-abiding citizens, so
sure.
Don't come for us. No, but I feel like check-in was fairly simple, and they spoke English. That's also another thing.
Check-in was it's just like most Airbnbs. You hit like a little code, and it pops out a key, and then you take the key up to the apartment, and you check, you go in, and that's it.
But also there was somebody, wherever their lobby is, he was reachable even after hours. So, I mean, sometimes when you do an actual Airbnb, they're not reachable after hours, right?
I mean, they should.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, they might get upset if you call them at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, but you're their guest, right?
That's true. But this is where I screwed the pooch because I was just too much in La La Land, and I was like, this is going to be a dope place to stay. All right, we learned a valuable lesson this trip. It was that Levi is at the age where he's 2, and we need to be in a house. We can no longer be in a hotel room. It's not suitable for us. So,
or he needs his own room.
Exactly. Which that's like, who does that?
Well, I guess, I don't know.
Or it's like just, if it would have had a family room, right?
So he stays in his own room, so he's accustomed to that. So when we were trying to go to bed, he thought it was party time. He thought it was like a slumber party. He was like jumping around and stuff like that. And then he was just excited that we were in a different place. And then the hotel is like Alice in Wonderland. So this kid thinks he's like in a playhouse and yeah. And then Chloe's there too, and she's snoring and is keeping up our son. But yeah, he needs his own room because the hotel was actually pretty cool. Had like a little table and it had a nice view. And usually the places that we do get, we usually try to make sure he has a room by himself, right? Mm-hmm. So, because we always like to have a little, a nightcap?
Yeah.
Drink some little wine on the balcony and stuff like that. That's how we kind of mitigate. If now that we're not able to go out and party it up because of we're a family, we always try to get like a Airbnb with a decent balcony or a view, so that way we can just kind of sit and have our own little like fun at the end of the day. So, but yeah,
this is what happens when I book the trips.
Yeah, that's super key. Because every night we were like struggling to
go to bed.
Down. Yeah, this kid was like up at 1 a.m, trying to like jump up and down and asking me to play Baby Shark, and all. I'm like, dude, please go to bed.
It was very, you guys. It was like torture for me, torture for Abe, and I felt so bad for Levi because we really almost, we had to be really stern and be like, you need to go to bed. And he was very upset. And then I had a lot of mom guilt on that trip.
And it didn't have AC. So we were like opening the window and you could hear people partying outside. So that didn't help either.
It wasn't that hot though.
It was hot for me.
Okay. You guys, let me tell you something. I survived a pregnancy over here in Europe. And it was not that hot, okay? It
was hot.
Abe was like giving me the look like, that's enough now.
Okay, I thought it was hot.
It was not that hot. Okay, so anyways, it also had a little kitchen. So, you know what, you guys? Just throwing that out there. But this was the first time that we were able to take a trip. And I know I already said that, but that was pretty awesome that we were able to do it. Because the last 2 weeks leading up to Memorial Day weekend for us, because you guys know we're both in uniform right now, they changed our leave guidance. Like every day the guidance changed, I felt like. And so to me, it was frustrating to try to channel up a request and hoping that everything was going to be cleared. Like that's just the way things are right now. Because I know some of you guys ask, like, what's it like trying to take leave during COVID? And I'm like, when you're in uniform, it's one thing, but when you're both in uniform, like it's a whole other ball game. And then you're against COVID and things are changing, like numbers are going up, numbers are going down. So if numbers would have gone up in Berlin up anymore, we wouldn't have been able to go. So it's kind of like one of those things where you're buying tickets to go places and crossing your fingers and hoping for the best. So for this specific trip, we just decided it would be better for us to just drive somewhere versus trying to navigate the whole flight thing, because Levi's now at the age where he's going to actually have to wear a mask when we leave on an airplane.
When we hop on the plane, right?
Yeah. So there was that. That was like our whole hotel thing.
So anyway, what did you think about Berlin before you got there?
When I hear Berlin, I think of New Year's Eve and clubs and the Berlin Wall. And I don't know if anybody else can relate, but I didn't realize that I remembered nothing about the Berlin Wall. Like, I wish we would have had this conversation, like, before we went there. I just knew that the Berlin Wall was really historical and that it separated everybody in Berlin, like, both sides. I didn't really think about anything else. And I just knew that it was really iconic when it came down. And that was it. Like, that was it. That's all I thought of Berlin. Like, there's a wall and there's probably some dope-ass clubs that I would really, really want to go to, but we're not going to go to on this trip because we have Levi. And that was it. And then we got there, and the first day, oh my God, you guys. Abe had us walk. I swear to God, it was at least 4 miles.
Dude, it was literally like it was a 20-minute walk.
That was not a 20-minute walk.
Dude, it was I promise you.
That was over an hour.
Okay.
It was an hour there and an hour back.
Where, to Checkpoint Charlie?
Yes.
Mind you, you were like, it is right next to Checkpoint Charlie. We could walk there. You said it like 10 times. You're like, we could walk there.
I didn't even know what Checkpoint Charlie was before this trip, to be honest with you.
Well, here's the other thing. You were like, I booked it in the heart of the city. And I was like, okay, do you know where that's at? And you were like, yes. And I was like, okay.
These are things I tell
like,
Abe just to get by.
You're like, this is where it's at. And in my head, I was like, this is not in the center of the city. But I'm not going to criticize Courtney. She's whatever, you know. So here we are. And I was like, all right, we're right next to all the monuments, supposedly. And you're like, yeah. And I was like, okay, so let's walk there. And you were like, okay. So here we are walking. Now, it wasn't an hour. It was like 20 minutes, but it was like...
You guys, it was an hour.
Okay. I guess you booked our Airbnb an hour away from all the stuff.
No, a walking distance, an hour.
Who walks an hour?
You do.
To get to something?
Yes. You were even like, I'm so tired from walking around all day today.
Yeah.
It was a trip, you guys, because Levi is finally, like, I don't, honestly, like, I think back and I'm like, how did we pull off, like, traveling with a newborn? Yes, we traveled when Levi was a newborn, with an infant, with a pre-toddler, and now, like, a full-on toddler. And now he's at this age where he's really giving us a run for our motherfucking money, because everything is definitely taking it up a notch in his attitude. When he wants to eat, we went without a nap. I mean, we were just, and that's what happens when you go on vacation. Like, as a parent, like, you really, sometimes, like, you get thrown off schedule. But we ended up waking up late because we went to bed late, you know, because I was, like, out there trying to parallel park at 2 o'clock in the morning. Apparently the car could parallel park itself, but Abe didn't want to tell me. And we woke up late, and then I know places that I wanted to go eat at. So, like, when I travel, like, I like to look up, like, where are the iconic spots, where are a couple of the off-beaten paths that I can find on somebody's Instagram, and where do I need to eat? And one thing that I knew about Berlin, other than those two things, was the fact that I've been told by so many people it's the vegan capital of the world, which I thought was insane before I got there.
I was over it.
I didn't even believe in it. But Abe was really not, like, for trying vegan food, but I totally was.
No, it was cool. It was fun. It was just the same thing everywhere.
So
it was like hummus, and then it was like, hey, we're a fusion place, so we also have kimchi. And I'm like, okay.
Whatever. That kimchi cauliflower was amazing, okay?
It's
Don't
everywhere.
diss
it. Was
it.
like, hey, we have hummus, we have kimchi, and we have spring rolls. We're exotic. We're an exotic vegan food place. And I was like, oh, okay.
Abe's never impressed with vegan food, but I always am, and am pleased to try it. There were a couple spots that we tried some mochi donuts. Or am I saying it wrong?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. So they were vegan donuts, and then we had some vegan teas, and we had some vegan cauliflower, fried cauliflower kimchi.
You had that.
And we had vegan spring rolls that I had. And a couple other, like, vegan snacks that I don't really remember. But I do want to give them a shout out because they were super, super friendly. And they were really, the food was good, even though Abe didn't want to try it. So
I did try. I tried that, and then you were like, let's go to this other place. Let's drive 20 minutes across Berlin to go to this other spot. And I'm like, what do they got? and I'm looking at the menu, and it was like kimchi and spring rolls and hummus, and I was like, so the exact same thing that we just got. So that's why I'm saying that.
I definitely.
And then everywhere we went, every place had friggin' kimchi and spring rolls. And I'm like,
is
this like a vegan thing?
You know what? You just need to quit spraying your haterade everywhere. Okay, so.
Although we did go to that place and they had like a really good quiche or something like that.
That was the first spot that we went to. We stopped. It was raining. We were literally walking for like an hour, and then it was raining. And we stopped at a place, and it was crazy because, so I know like in the States, there's
it was
like, it's a free for all.
It was like at the mall, right?
Yeah. But here, like you have to either have a negative COVID test. Some places you have to have a specific COVID test. Some places
you have to have the one that's like they take everywhere. It's like
PCR.
Well, it's like given by the government. Like they have like government places that are set up, and you go and take your COVID test. For German people, it's free. I don't know if you knew that. It's free.
Okay. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's free. But for us, we have to pay. Mm-hmm. So you have to shell out like 30 euros. And then you would have to shell out 30 euros, which is like $40 each. So that's $80 just off a rip if you want to do anything, if you're not vaccinated. However, we were vaccinated and we didn't have to do that. And our B&B was like right above the test for
a
the
COVID
vaccination
testing site. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was fairly simple to use.
It was weird because you would see and there'd be like
lines,
and then there'd be like all these other places, and people were like hustling COVID tests like everywhere. Like you would go somewhere and they'd have like a little cart, and they'd be like, get your COVID test here and we'll give you the results, and then you can like go eat at this place. And then other places, they were like, no, use our COVID testing station. You got to pay for our COVID testing station $30 if you want to eat here, and then we're going to let you eat here, and then you got to fucking pay us even more money. And I was just like, man, that's crazy.
Because what's the percentage that are vaccinated?
I think it was like less than 1% in Germany.
Are vaccinated?
I could be making that up. Don't fact check me, but
yeah.
It is really low. I know outside Ramstein Air Base, I think Ramstein, like military people are pretty much good with the vaccination, but most German people have not got the vaccine. Mm-hmm. So it just goes to show you go into our city too. They have those little COVID stations where you got to do a swab and go in, but you can outside eat, kinda.
Yeah, I feel like it's a new world that we're in. As stupid as it sounds, because we spend so much time like in our house, mm-hmm. that like when we actually go to like populated places now, like public places, it's like, whoa, what, everything's changed. But we were able to actually go in with no issue because we had our cards. And Abe was saying like, I feel like they could be stricter with it, but they're not.
Yeah, there's no process. It was kind of mind-blowing because here I just have this card on my phone. Is this made out of paper? I think I heard people were like counterfeiting COVID vaccine cards on Etsy.
Wow.
So yeah, you could buy them for like $15 or something like that, and they'll send you like your COVID vaccine, because all it is just like a card, like card stock.
That's true.
And it's printed on. There's no like seal or anything like that. There's no hologram. There's no like digital ID associated with your name or anything like that. It's just like this little card that says, yeah, you, and some random doctor like put his signature on it, right? So I took a picture of it on my phone. I actually ended up I forgot my vaccine card at home. I didn't drive with it. And so I'm pretty much like flashing my vaccine card on my phone. And then they're just looking at it, and it's like one of those weird things where like they have to look at it and they act like they're like inspecting the dates and your name. but is just like a picture on my phone. And then they wouldn't, like, they didn't check my ID or anything like that. I mean, I wasn't complaining, you know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, I'm just trying to eat. But, like, I would just show them this card. They wouldn't verify if I was the real person on the card. To be honest, I could have, like, downloaded that picture off of Google or something like that, right? And been like, yeah, I'm vaccinated, and, like, showed it to them, and they would have been like, oh, okay. So, like, I don't know. Like, I didn't really need to have a vaccine card. Like, I could have, like, legit, somebody could have, like, I don't know, send me a picture of theirs, or I got one off of Google and then showed it to them, and they would have been like, okay. So there was no, like, scanning or anything. It was just, I don't know, I just feel like it was kind of made up, to be honest. The whole thing was, like, made up.
It was, I don't know, it's just a weird time. That's just how I feel.
It was just made up.
Well,
they're just, like, making
we just got
things up.
A vaccine for no reason. I mean, I don't know.
That's honestly how I felt.
I felt like being, though, like, I was like, this is how the other side lives, because all you had to do was just whip out that card and you were in. Like, we were at a restaurant, we were in a museum, we were shopping. I was like, oh my God, like, I'm going, like, dropping money right now because I haven't lived like this. I mean, I guess it's only been a few months, right, that we've been in quarantine again, but to have that level of freedom that we've had, we haven't done that. I mean, honestly, anything really like that since before COVID, right? But then it's been like 6, 7, like since last fall that we've done this. So it was, really like, it was a culture shock. I was going a little crazy in the souvenir store, you guys. Like, I think I took home like one too many things from the Berlin Wall.
I bought a piece of the Berlin Wall. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I bought a bag.
And then it broke in half.
It did break in half. The Berlin Wall did. This beautiful, okay, we spent like 30 minutes in the fucking store, you guys, picking out the perfect piece of the Berlin Wall that we wanted. All right, so you go in this souvenir store. Abe and I are not
museum. It's the museum.
Okay, I just don't like to say that word because you say that. Mispronounce it.
We'll say it.
It's okay. Museum.
No, you say it right.
Okay,
right,
so tell them how I say
museum. Let's go to the museum. That's how you say it.
It's that twang coming out.
Yeah.
Okay, so Abe and I are not souvenir people. Like, we do not like to buy souvenirs. Like, that's just not how we roll. But I don't know, we were really touched by the whole story of the Berlin Wall and like reading all the history. And this was something that we wanted to have to showcase in our house. So you go in this store and they're like telling you that these are all pieces of the Berlin Wall. My first thought, because you know me, I'm like, this is some bullshit. They're just trying to get you. This is fake. But then they have like a certificate saying that it's real. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe it's not. And sometimes like when I have those thoughts, I have to like keep them at bay because it burst Abe's bubble too much sometimes. We went down this road with the DNA test. Remember when I told you that the DNA test was fake and they were just trying to steal your money and you got really upset?
Yeah, I did.
It bothered him for like months, you guys, and it was literally just a prank I wanted to play on him.
Oh, it's definitely real because I found other people that I'm related to that actually took the test who are my family, and they didn't. You were like, they're just making it up, but I ended up matching with other people in my family that took the 23andMe that didn't know that that they took it, and yeah.
All right. So
sense. Anyway, yeah.
We spent like 30 minutes looking for the perfect piece of the Berlin Wall that we wanted. I mean, we were going to buy like a $300 piece.
I wanted a brick.
It was like a brick
one.
that was like on a art mantle, art display, like some type of art display, I would say. And I was like, yeah, we're going to take this home. And then I was thinking, how the hell are we going to get this from Germany to Colorado? And then we were like, all right, well, let's go to something smaller. So then we found a tile and it was beautifully displayed on the tile. And then we picked it out and I was like, this is what we want. And we took it home and then We drove back with it, and how the fuck it broke, I don't know.
You're
But
swinging it around in the
I didn't
the
even load up
bag.
the car.
No, you had it. You put it in the bag, your canvas bag, and I was watching you swing it around everywhere, just like slam it down and everything. And I was like, it probably broke.
You know what? I think that you're being a tad bit dramatic, and that you're making this up to
I
make me look
swear,
bad.
You're just swinging it around. You're just like and I was just like, well, it's either gonna break, but how am I gonna break a piece of concrete? And guess what? You did. You broke it. I opened it up, and it was
didn't.
cracked. And I was like, I mean, it's still a piece. Now it's just two pieces of the Berlin Wall.
We can
I guess
super
I'll,
glue
like,
it.
glue it together or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did that, right? We got a piece of the Berlin Wall, and we did. So let's talk about Checkpoint Charlie. Can you walk us through Checkpoint Charlie? Because I guarantee you that some of our listeners are going to be like, "Yeah, I don't know what Checkpoint Charlie is either."
Checkpoint Charlie is like the iconic main entrance from United States controlled West Berlin into the USSR, the communist side of East Berlin, pretty much. So I guess with Berlin, because it's the capital city, they divvied it up after the war. Like the US got a little bit, the UK got a little bit, and France got a little bit of it. So like the Allies, and then Russia, because World War II, like they're fighting on two fronts. So they were like, I want some of this too. So they split it up. Obviously, in that time, it was like the Red Scare. So they were like, hey, we definitely have to be on the other side of the communist side. The U.S. was, and they did so. I think overnight they put up the wall like with barbed wire, and then they just started pretty much like dismantling or taking all the broken down buildings from the war and like erecting a wall, like just like a messed up wall. So the Berlin Wall that we know today, the iconic one, is actually like the third iteration of the wall. The first is like the barbed wire and brick, and then the second was like some makeshift they stacked concrete slabs on top of each other, and they made like a makeshift wall, and then they put up like a fence, and they made like an area where you had to run across with like barbed wire and stuff like that. You can see pictures of it, like people, like soldiers trying to like leave their posts and all sorts of things, right? And then the last was like the Berlin Wall, what we know of it today. And yeah, I think from like the 1950s, 40s onto the when they tear down the wall, like the 80s or something like that. 1980 something, 86, right? Up until that whole time, they had the Berlin Wall, or 3 iterations. But there's this certain kind of entrance where they wanted to be able to move freely, the people of Berlin, because pretty much it was divided by families. Like your aunts and uncles could be on one side of the wall, and you would be living on the other side of the wall. And they had people defecting all the time. Like they had like doctors running away and stuff like that. They would train doctors, and then they would like run away to West Berlin because they didn't want to be like in a communist society and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, they had this like checkpoint, and it was pretty much like a guard tower, just like if you were to roll up on a military base with like a little, like, what are those things called? The I don't know, like that stick that rises and falls that lets you pass through. I can't think of it. I don't know.
I'm like, yeah, they can
barricade.
totally see you right now.
Anyway, so they had that, and that's how people would move freely, and it was controlled by the U.S. on one side, and it was like pretty much a line. So on one side is the U.S., on the other side is Russia, and it's like literally like a hop, skip, and a jump. And that was called Checkpoint Charlie. But anyway, now it's not there, and now they just have like the little booth to signify, hey, this is where it was. And interesting enough, they have a McDonald's right behind Checkpoint Charlie. So it's like the ultimate form of like capitalism, kind of like what the United States kind of represents. And now we got a McDonald's like right where the headquarters of communist Berlin would have been. But yeah.
I was really taken away. So I am not like you where you're more of the history buff. So I look to you to like, reiterate all that because, I was just absent a lot of days during history class, I guess. And I don't really retain any of that.
I actually learned that while we were at the Airbnb. I just like put it on YouTube and then I watched like a documentary because I was like, oh, I should.
And I fell asleep.
Yeah. So that way, because I hate doing the audio tours.
Do you really?
Lately, yeah. I used to really like them, but they're so fucking slow.
I guess, well, for me, like with the last time we tried to do one, we had Levi and he's
screaming. He's like, and then the guy always talks like so slow. He's like, and then on 1941, the U.S. went to Checkpoint Charlie, and I'm like, all right, let's go. Let's skip.
Yeah.
What's the good stuff? So.
But after we did Checkpoint Charlie and then we walked through an entire museum learning more about it, I was pretty excited to go home and watch the documentary over it. And I was so mind blown because I think that you just, like for me, I didn't think about, what it must have been like to have their freedom stripped from them and what it must have been like to try to escape and risk your life to go from one side to another and how scary that must be. And, it's one of those things when you grow up and you hear, growing up in the States where it's told like we're the biggest, baddest country and, like that's what we do. That's what we do for a living, right? That's why we put on this uniform is to fight, continue the fight for freedom and defend the Constitution of the United States. And it's like, not to be like, way to show up late to the party, but it's one of those reminders, like, this is why we do what we do. Because if we don't, then, it could have spread even further, right?
Yeah.
That's what they say.
What's funny about that, too, is, like, the wall is they said that when they put up the wall, they said it was a great sigh of relief for the U.S. They were like, oh, thank God. Like, I guess the U.S. didn't really take it in a negative fashion. They're just like, all right, you stay over here, we'll stay over here, and that's fine. Because I guess they had a bunch of like showdowns all the time, and like they bring in tanks and stuff like that. So
interesting.
Yeah, and they didn't really like people coming and going, like from one side to another. They didn't really like that movement. So when they put up the wall and they were like, hey, you cannot go over there anymore. They were like, okay, thank God we don't have to deal with that anymore. Yeah.
It's still scary. So part of their museum that they had there, it was like people's survival stories and like
people escaping.
And it was
like stillaways on cars, like hopping over the barbed wire, like going under different passports and stuff like that. Yeah. It
was very educating and eye-opening, and also broke my heart a little bit. I guess for me, I'm like, well, I'm very fortunate that, my family, that I can remember, that we have knowledge of, that we've never had to experience anything like that as far back as I can remember or been told. And then, I mean, other than Checkpoint Charlie, I think we kind of just called it a day. Like we found some public parks. I was like, public parks. We found some public parks, and then we were like walking around, checking out art, and then like the next day we
I think we spent most of our time in like the east side,
right?
Which is like the more artsy part of Berlin and stuff like that. It was cool. That's where all like the good restaurants were at, and like they had like flea markets and stuff like that. And I guess like their flea markets in Berlin are like really sought after because they have a lot of things from like the war and like.
And we didn't even go?
It wasn't open because of coronavirus.
Oh,
so the
okay.
park that we went to, they usually have a flea market there, and I guess it wasn't open. So
okay. So then we woke up the next day, and something I loved about being in Berlin was it is very much like a city vibe, like a real city vibe.
Yeah, it's a city. It's a city.
Like a city,
like
and
metro,
so
like
yeah, like for me, I just resonate so much with New York. Like and Philly. Like it's like those places, those cities are like my second home / only home. Like I call those places home more than I do Texas, to be honest with you. And so being in Berlin, it just was like a sigh of relief. Like I felt like I was home. And I love like waking up. Like Chloe had me up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and like the bread delivery man's like outside in the truck, like delivering bread, and there's people biking, and like the city's just waking up, and I love that feeling. So we woke up and we headed out. We got our vegan food for the day, and Abe was very unimpressed. And then we headed to the Jewish Memorial, and that was, I guess, a little anticlimactic, would you say? I didn't realize that it's just like in Berlin, it's just out there. And I would assume something that...
Well, they had a museum. They just didn't have it open.
Okay.
So they go into a little bit more, and like under
That's
the
right.
memorial, there's like more things that you could do. But we were just able to see the stones. That's it. Like those iconic memorial stones, like these huge things that you could walk through, and like they're super strict. They're like, which it makes sense because it's a memorial, right, for the murdered Jews of Europe. You're not supposed to like stand on them. It's like a grave site. You're not supposed to be like running around or taking pictures or things of that nature.
So what was interesting was that Abe says that, but then there were kids that were literally like running through the entire thing playing tag. So I mean, obviously not our kid because we didn't allow him to go in there, but I was just like, what is happening right now? So it was just very interesting, and I wish that the museum would have been open. I forgot. That's why I said it was anticlimactic, because it wasn't open, so we didn't like really get to see as much as we wanted to. And then we walked over to, what was
It was an art museum.
the arch called again?
The Brandenburg Gate.
Yeah. And so that was
cool.
pretty iconic and nice to see.
But all in all, that's why I say, like, you only need like 4 days to be in Berlin. Like, I thought there was going to be like, I guess, a lot more things to do, like museums or things to check out. But it was pretty quick.
It was. That was a quick stop. But I mean, it allowed us to just kind of like chill.
It was
chill
more
out,
of a leisure city, I think.
which was perfect, I feel like, for us in this time right now, because we were kind of like already running on empty, and we just like needed to be able to like get away, relax, but also see some things. So the last day that we were there, we went to see the Berlin Wall, and then we walked around and saw the graffiti, and it was pretty nice. It was a dope spot. So I think that pretty much concludes everything that we did in Berlin, like highlighting like all the super iconic things and all the spots that we checked out. One place I didn't mention was Worst Behavior. Shout out to them, because their clothes are bomb, and they sell the most comfortable sweatpants, you guys. Sweat sets that I have ever laid my hands on. I don't care about anybody else out there. These are the sweats that you want to get. And I actually got to go to their actual store, and I definitely nerded out, and Abe didn't know what to do with me. And then they were closed on Sunday, and I was really upset because I wanted to go back and buy another set for him and I, and we missed out. But that's the way things go in Germany, because everything's usually closed on Sunday. But with that being said, that concludes our trip to Berlin, and we will be catching you guys next week. We'll have more house updates. We'll have other kind of updates, and yeah, we're back, and we missed you guys. Sorry we went MIA for a couple of weeks, and we'll catch you guys next Monday. All right, guys, thanks for listening.